Okay, welcome to this chess video, everyone. We have something a little bit different for this one. We're going to be playing a live game, in this case against a friend of mine. Heckin' Sprout also has a YouTube channel, so make sure to check out their channel as well. And so the whole point of this series here is we're just going to be playing chess live, and I'm going to be giving some of my thoughts here. Now this is of course opening theory, so there's a ton to comment on, but this is a slower game, so I have a little bit of time to share things. Let me just click back in the moves here. All of this was solid. This is called the Grunfeld defense. I talk about this in my video on the hypermodern opening. You can take a look at this on your own time. I have the link above so you can click it. All this is still theory. This is the main line, and we're completely solid here. Knight f3 is one of the main moves. There's also a main line of bishop c4. There's a lot of complications here. It's a very well-known opening. So you really just have to pick the system you know best and then stick with it. So the whole point of this idea here, this whole series, is we just want to be instructional and really kind of share across all rating levels kind of my thought process and how I approach all these different positions. It's actually kind of nostalgic for me because I used to live stream chess several years ago, but I only did it for a few videos and then I switched to YouTube, mostly because I didn't like how the time zone difference, half the world was always at a really inconvenient time, and I kind of like how YouTube, you can just watch it whenever on your own time. So maybe in the YouTube comments you mention what part of the world you're from the US. It's nice to meet you. It's always nice to have more people all over the world playing chess. And so now c5, this is one of the main moves, which I do talk about in my video. So if you remember the hypermodern opening video or you're just checking it out, c5 is one of the best moves they can play. Usually they'll be playing knight to c6. They'll be putting a lot of pressure on the center, which is exactly what they should be doing. So that's all pretty good so far. The reasoning for my rook b1 is this is a sideline. It's not one of the main moves, but it's a pretty common sideline. And the point is it ties down this bishop to defense of the pawn. Pushing this gives themselves light square weaknesses, and it's not really ideal. And so what ends up happening is very often they'll want to develop the bishop somewhere, but then this pawn may fall. And so it's kind of an awkward situation where now they have to kind of balance, do I want to develop or should I defend the pawn, or like what's the situation there? I think castling is good. You also have this I think is solid. I mostly play this from the white side, so again I'm not too sure what the best moves for black are. Maybe it's time for me to analyze some on my own from the other side. Sometimes you get that where you play it as one side, you love an opening, and then you don't know necessarily the best things for the other side. Now this is still theory. This is a really interesting pawn sacrifice, which again is still a main idea in this sideline. It's unusual because it comes with check, right? One of the benefits of getting our rook out of the corner. The idea is if they take here, which is really popular by the way, it's a pawn with check, but once I address the check, they have their knight hanging. And the fact that this knight has to move is actually buying us some more time a little bit later. And we may get the pawn back, or we'll have this really good attack. And so it looks like now we'll actually get to this. So if I recall here, I believe it's bishop d2, take back with the queen. They have some permanent problems on the dark squares, and don't forget this knight could also come in if the queen is on h6. That's one idea. The other ideas kind of involve where their knight goes. Really just depends what variation they play. So I'll just play this. This is also an idea. So it really just depends on what variation they choose from here. Taking is, of course, very popular. Probably most likely, but we'll see what ends up happening. I'm going to try and have minimal editing for this video. I will edit some. I'll try and keep it mostly unedited, so you just get my more in-game thought process throughout the entire thing. I think sometimes the slower process helps people. I know, at least for me, that helped me a lot when I was first learning. So now I try and give this to other people as well, but it's not always easy to balance. When I first started live streaming, I thought I'll just do really long instructional things like Daniel Naroditsky, one of the great chess streamers I looked up to back then, and especially with his YouTube, I was a really huge fan of it. And so from there, it was a really big inspiration to start my channel. My idea didn't work out because my idea was I'd have these long videos, but unfortunately people wouldn't really click them, right? Because nobody wants to watch a 3+ hour live stream from someone they don't know. And I can understand that because, truth be told, I wouldn't click a 3-hour video either, right? So a lot of people, unfortunately, are kind of forced to stream Blitz or maybe Rapid, and that's like the best they have. This is not one of the main moves because, of course, I can take the knight, and then a queen trade is fine. I think what they should have probably done here, let me think, if I go back, what would be better? Well, let me instead go back and let me just recapture, and then I'll discuss the other stuff. But let me go back a bit in the variations, just kind of in-game. What would be better? I think moving the knight, if I go back again. What move is that? Yeah, here. Well, before the queen. I think, let me see. I think this is the main move, if I recall. It goes take, 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 and then just gives back the pawn. I think this is maybe playable, but that's a little bad. You got the whole back rank fest thing. Knight might relocate, but that's not really ideal. I think this is probably the best try, if I recall correctly. But here it just blunders the material. I chose to go with the king because this is an endgame. It doesn't look like it, right? The queens are off. But I do want my king active in the center, and so it actually makes sense rather than getting my knight passive. I don't really want to castle because I just take longer. I castle, I'm safe, and then later I'm going to have to come out. It's kind of counterproductive, right? So it just makes sense to bring my king towards the center right away. So let's see. So they have doubled pawns. Now I might go after that at some point. I think I just want to develop. I think I'd just stay instructional. One idea would have been this, to try and tie down their bishop to defense. But long term, they could kick this away. Maybe like f6. I don't know. Just something I wasn't really too keen on going for. I think more solid, develop the bishop, get this rook into play, and just kind of play straightforward. We are up material, so that's a huge help for us. And they have the doubled pawns, so we potentialed into the endgame. I started a chess.com forum thread, so if you haven't seen it yet, you can take a look at it. I'm literally just asking what time control do you think would be best for this instructional series, and what rating would you like to see me play against? So far of the comments, the most popular answers I got were mostly players in the roughly 1200 to 1600 range, and also games that are at least 10 minutes. It seems like 1510 was popular, and so that's what we chose here for this one. This is not a rigid thing. I will change. We'll probably mix it up a little flexible each time. You know, keep a little variety. I want to play people from all rating levels, including some people around my rating if possible. Maybe even a little bit higher would be nice. I just really want to kind of explain my thought process and really kind of share with everyone kind of how I reason through things. And there's a lot of instructional value from that, even if players are lower rated. I think I'll play h4. Again, this is like an endgame. I'm not too worried about my king safety. If they give a check, I just move towards the center, right? Like no problems whatsoever. I'm basically kind of trying to almost do a pawn storm. It's not quite a pawn storm because, you know, it's like an endgame. It's not really a whole middle game thing. But I'm trying to use this pawn to h5 and try and open lines of attack for this rook. I still want to get to their king, right? Just because we're in an endgame doesn't mean all of our attacking potential is gone, just a lot of it, right? I still want to develop, I still want to have middle game plans. Really the whole concept of middle game, end game, and even opening to an extent, really that's just kind of terminology. It's a way to describe the game, give you an idea of what to play. But chess is much more fluid than that. Any stage of the game, you know, you could really play any ideas, right? Don't limit yourself, think, well, I'm out of the opening, so opening principles don't apply. They apply into the middle game, and sometimes even end game. Similarly, there might be some endgame motifs that come up in the middle game because you're trying to steer towards the endgame. Or in some cases, it might even come up in endgame out of the opening. And if you think that's extreme, you can take a look at my chess video on the Berlin endgame. That's basically an opening, right? You're on what, like move 7? 8, 9, it's an endgame. You know, like queens are off the board. You have a ton of pieces, but it's worked out with so much theory. It's pretty much an endgame. And so sometimes it's more the nature of the position rather than what move you're on or what pieces are even left. So we'll see what they do. If they play h5 with their pawn, that does stop me from playing h5. But the problem with that is then this is not quite a hole because they do have the presence of the f-pawn, but it's currently pinned. And so then g5 is basically a hole for my knight if they play pawn to pawn to h5. But we'll see. So I'm trying to see what they could do, really. Bishop b7 is not possible because the rook. Bishop d7 kind of interferes with their rook check on d8. They may just play the rook check on d8, but then I play king to e3. Yeah, I think we're pretty solid here. Let's not forget, they still have to address our h5 threat. h4, h5. Yep, they do go for that. Trying to think if I should go for this right away. I think I will. The reason I was a little hesitant is because I'm not really intending to sacrifice here. I don't want to give up 2 minor pieces for a rook and a pawn, because very often those are 2 very active pieces, which is definitely true here, whereas the rook and pawn are kind of defensive, right, and very often undeveloped. And so generally speaking, you want the minor pieces, especially in the opening. Now see, they're getting out of the pin maybe to try and kick my knight with this move. The reason I mostly went for this wasn't so much to take on f7, but because I wanted to get my knight forward, and I was seeing if maybe I could even provoke this to break the pin, which they haven't done yet. That would be a little inaccuracy on their part if they were to. I think I just want to play patiently. Let's just bring my king up. And so the reason that e6 would be inaccurate is because then e6 would create these weak dark squares. All these squares would be weak. You can take a look at my video on why you shouldn't move pawns in front of your castle to king. This is a really good example of this. It's an advanced concept, but this is what I really hope for this series. We can share advanced concepts even in lower rated games. And you can see how this applies to all rating levels. And we're not doing anything really crazy here. I mean, a lot of the opening was opening theory, but we're just playing solid, straightforward opening principles. And that's a very common theme. Now, here they're kicking my knight. I'm wondering if knight e6 is good. It's not necessary. I could just come back, and that's completely fine if I go back to f3. But I don't mind trading pieces. I am up material. 2 rooks endgame tends to be drawish, but I do think I want to simplify, because we do have the presence of the bishops, and they have doubled pawns. So if we imagine, like, if the pawns were equal, I didn't have a bishop. If we both have 2 rooks, it tends to be drawish. It's not as draw heavy as opposite color bishops, but you do have to be aware which endgames are potentially more of a draw than others. If both of us have 1 rook on the board, there's better winning chances, but rook endgames are just notorious for being tricky. So generally you don't want to trade into that unless you really know it's going to be good for you. Now in this case, I think it is good for me. I already have the open file. I can infiltrate on b7, start attacking this, and even if I can't tie them down with that, I always have play on the doubled pawns. Get any rook to c1, attack this pawn. And so I think we are better here, and so that's why I chose to trade. The goal is to simplify. Simplify doesn't always mean trade to an endgame. Sometimes it means I have a good attack. Let's just simplify the position by attacking their king and forcing them to defense. I think people generally say trading when they say simplify, but it's not the only way to play it. Alright, so let's see. I could fight for the d file. I could also play rook to b7, attacking the pawn as planned. They're probably intending this to kick my bishop, but then I just move the bishop. I don't think that's a big deal. I'm not really committed to that square. I don't see any meaningful dangerous threats or anything, so I think I'll just play this. Okay, so they do come back. That's fine. I say just double rooks. And then probably the plan, if they don't do anything with their rook, is probably move the rook here and then make room for the other rook to come here. And then we have the 2 rooks on the 7th. Maybe provoke something with our bishop. Get our pawns going. And I think we're in good shape. Let's see what we can do here. I mean, I'm trying to think what moves they really have to kind of untangle. It's not too easy. Seems like there's no meaningful pawn breaks. Can't really go here because that's just a trade, and similarly with this. You almost want to play this move, but then my bishop is guarding that square, so you really can't do that. And there isn't really a good way to stop this. You can't really go here either, because then I just trade rooks. I'm actually winning a rook, so maybe just a5, process elimination, but I mean, it's not great. It's basically Zugzwang. It's actually really hard to find a move. For those unaware, Zugzwang is the German word which means compulsion to move. It's a chess term that basically means one side is pretty much out of really decent moves. Doesn't mean they have literally no moves, although sometimes that's a common theme in the endgame. It can also be a middle game or endgame position, rarely out of the opening, although probably possible, where you basically have no meaningful good moves. Yeah, so they attack my bishop, which is reasonable as well. I may use this as an opportunity to trade rooks first. I think I'll do that, because it is with check, and I don't want the 2 rook endgame. So the question is, do I give a check here and then save my bishop? Or do I just save the bishop? I think I'm going to save the bishop first. The reason why was if I were to give a check and they were to move a king over, maybe then they could have attacked my bishop where it was. And then they could like sacrifice for the bishop and then grab my rook. Right, so it's just potential tactics. It's not right on the board yet, but we don't have to allow those possibilities. And so I think here they're probably best to just come back to d7, most likely, just so they're preventing me from this. But then if they go back here, I can attack this pawn, right? And if they go back to where they are to defend it, then my rook from here will just go here, now attacking the a-pawn. So again, I think we're really good here because we're up a pawn, and we have play against the doubled pawns. They may also try pushing the e-pawn. I don't think that's particularly good, but I don't see many good moves available, so they may also try that. Even if you're up a pawn, you always want to be looking for counterplay. I could be up a piece or rook or really anything. You still want to look at their counterplay. Very often, I think it's like some winning position, then I blow a tactic. It happens. Like all rating levels. It happens to everyone. So you just have to be aware and keep your wits about you. I like a quotation from Jeremy Soman in his book, How to Reassess Your Chess. His 4th edition of it, he had a line that said something like, I don't remember the exact word, it's like, when you're winning, you have to keep your wits about you because your opponent is like a cornered animal. And we know that cornered animals fight back. It was something along those lines. I read that book probably years ago at this point. It was a good book. I wouldn't recommend it for most people just because the easiest puzzles in the book are 1400 and the highest ones are like 2300 plus or something. I would say if you're like 1600 to maybe 1800 rating, you'll probably benefit most from that book. I read it, I think, when I was like 1900chess.com, so I breezed through it kind of quickly. But it is a good read, especially if you are a little bit lost in the middle game. It's just, unfortunately, a little bit more advanced for most players. So, right now I'm thinking e5, I can always play f4, support things, or I could just trade pawns. There's also rook check, but then the rook check on g8, king h7. Let's see. I may also ignore it. Sometimes not all threats are worth addressing, right? Like maybe I could just play here, attack both of these pawns on the 7th rank. That's actually nice because they can't go rook here to defend because my bishop controls that square. Because that would be annoying because then they would add pressure to e4. Let's actually just do this. Yeah, I don't mind. If they take the pawn, I'm not taking back on e4. Because that would just expose my king to more checks. Ooh, so they defend. Okay. That's a little unusual looking because pawn to f4 and then I'm threatening the e5 fork. Yeah, that's a little bit scary looking. Let me see. If I go f4 and they go here, so this isn't a fork and trying to attack this. They come back. Yeah, I'm winning this pawn at the very least. So let's play f4. I mean, they are playing well. You know, I mean, to be fair, they are down material, so it's very difficult to find good moves. So considering the situation, like, they're playing well. It's kind of unfortunate that they got this out of the opening, where they dropped that knight on c6. But, I mean, overall, they've been playing pretty solid. And the Grunfeld is not an easy opening to learn. That's a much more advanced opening. I mean, I'm of the kind of mindset that if you really want to play an opening, I say play it. I don't care how complicated it is. If you feel motivated, you want to learn the Catalan, the Sicilian Najdorf, the Grunfeld, I say go for it. but just be aware of what you're getting into. For most people, if you're not really committed to that opening, I would not recommend any of those openings I mentioned. Maybe for 1800 plus, then I might recommend it. But until then, probably not. All right, so here they just took. So I've given back the pawn. I can take on a7. Let's see. Is there anything that really I'm worried about? I don't think so. Pretty much everything is defended. I can always take on e4 later, so let's just take on a7. Make the a pawn a pass pawn. Okay, I did see that, but then I have this move. Are there any real threats? See, I'm really glad there's no, like, pawn moves here. Get the right arrow. Arrow key's not working. Might need a different mouse. So pawn check, if I'm here, could be checkmate, because the rook would be on the third rank. But there are no pawns like that, and there's no meaningful check from that, so I'm completely safe going this way. But okay, they just repeat. Not really sure the purpose of that. So they go there, but that just blunders the rook. Probably trying to get my bishop. I think that was just like a quick impulse thing. It's very often when you kind of get into that pressure that happens sometimes. Yeah, so they just resign. It was a good game. We'll definitely review it. I may play them another time, but at least that concludes it for this video. I'll hit the review still. We still want to learn from mistakes, and I feel like keeping instructional concept, we do need to look things over. So I do not play perfectly. Nobody does. Even Magnus Carlsen goes over his games. You all should too. So let's see. We played the opening, the Grunfeld defense, super solid. We do play this. It's fine. This is the main move. I did recall that. D5. Knight A5 seems to be the top engine move for now. Knight E5 also equally good. Sorry, that's D4. E5, yeah. I actually did mention this, right? I think I did mention it was either here or the other move. Where they could play this is like completely fine. Maybe I did mention it one move later. Maybe I said it after this. Yeah, here's where I mentioned it. Yeah, knight D4 is best. Just give back the pawn. Computer doesn't even take right away. It could. Computer just has bishop E2. Don't even have to take right away. That's a small nuance, but we're talking centi pawns. I mean, I would take this, and I'm completely fine. They could castle, and then bishop E2 would transpose. White is nicely centralized. They're developed. There's really nothing with the center. Slightly better. Let's see. What else could they have tried? Oh, yeah, there is also another line that I mentioned. Where was that? Instead of blocking here, I did mention this, but here that loses, right? I think they'd have to trade first. Yeah, that loses because the knight. So let me see. Let's see if trade. No, that's what we looked at. Where was the queen a5 line? There was a line I remember where queen a5 was an idea. Maybe it was before the knight. This is the kind of thing I need to review, right? I don't get this opening too often. I remember I even mentioned it in the Hypermodern video, but I made that video a while ago. So here they blunder the knight. We're fine. We bring the king up. This is solid. So far, so good. Going to the endgame. There's no blunders, inaccuracies, nothing yet. I mean, they're all green-looking moves, so you don't have to look too closely. I'm curious. Yeah, this was the best move. Okay, so I was curious how good this move was or not. What number move is that? Second best. So rook, second best. Bishop back was the very best. Might even change with engine depth, too. We just provoke weaknesses. Here, the computer is very mean. It says checkmate in 8 moves. Okay. I did not see that. I played f4, which is probably reasonable. The mate is actually e5 check. If they capture here, we take this way. They come back. There's this check here, and then f4 is mate. They might have better defense by like throwing away the rook or something, but from the human standpoint, that's the checkmate threat. I didn't quite see that. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have slowed down a bit. Because if I played this check, it is a forcing move. Right? Like, that's pretty forcing. I mean, if they go back, They couldn't go here because the bishop. I still win the pawn, right? So at worst, I'm still in good shape. And so maybe that was reason that I should have calculated this line. It is a slower game too, so there's really no reason not to. But we took here, we're completely fine. You know, we're still safe, and then they hung the rook. Okay, what would have been better here? Yeah, the computer does not love the options. Looks like rook d6 is best, but it's like +5. That is not fun to hold. So yeah, it seems like more of an opening mistake. But, you know, the thing is, this happens across all rating levels. Even grandmasters do this. And this is a common point that I wanted to address some point in the series. And so the fact it happens in the first video, I don't mind sharing. And that point is basically, people across all rating levels, including grandmasters, they will blunder. They'll blunder mate in 1, they'll hang queens, they'll hang knights, like across everything. And you may look at that like it's impossible. Yeah, time pressure is sometimes a factor. They are human, that's also a factor. But really the big reason is because their opponents put them under pressure. And that is such a major key that I see so many chess coaches and high-rated players just seem to neglect. They just like completely forget about that. And so they see someone who's like, say, 1800 plus, they hang a knight, and they're like, see, I played this person, they hung a knight. They're like, you know, it's just follow opening principles, don't hang your pieces. You'll get to 1800 plus. I'm going to put it nicely. That's garbage. Because what happens is they forget how good they are. And they don't realize, yeah, but you were putting them under pressure the whole game. Let's say you're playing someone who's 1,000. Let's say the chess coach or the streamer, whoever, say they're like 2,000 plus, right? That's 1,000 skill gap, right? If you're 2,000, imagine you playing a 3,000 computer. How often are you going to blunder, right? It's the same problem. And so it's not that opening principles takes you that far and just don't hang pieces. It's that they're putting you under a lot of pressure the whole game. And that's what we had here. You know, so the fact that they blundered out the opening, they're already 1,300. That's a pretty high rating. The average rating is only in the 600s. You can see more about that in this video here. And so how would they possibly do this move out of the opening, right? A little past move 11. Or sorry, a little past move 10. It's literally move 11. Where they hang a knight. I guarantee you, if they're playing someone around 1,300, they would not just blunder a knight like that, right? But they're under pressure from the opening. Maybe they didn't know theory as far as I did, right? If we go back, maybe they were on their own, right? I still knew that was a book move, but they might have been thinking and kind of using up some of their mental energy. And then I play this. They may or may not know it. They come up with this move, which is one of the best moves, right? And so they may or may not know this. I play here, they're thinking, they're using a little bit of time. And I'm still on autopilot, right? So I'm like, I'm fresh, right? Whereas they have to be thinking. So there's a lot of value in looking at openings and opening theory. And this is a great example of this. It can help you save mental energy. And that's why every stage of the game is important. Any step where you can simplify this already complicated game is probably a benefit to you. So what ends up happening is when they trade here, they've used all their mental energy. And now they play this move, hanging the knight, right? Let's see how long they spent on it. 3 seconds. Right, and I don't say this to, you know, put them down or anything. It's the opposite. We're here to help, right? But when it's a long-time control game, sometimes they move impulsively, right? A lot of the moves were an opening, you know, so we had kind of quicker pace, right? But you get into a position you don't know, and then you play kind of more on instinct. And that can hurt you, especially over the board, right? The longer the time control, the more that you need to kind of sit back, double check, maybe literally sit on your hands. That's an old trick they used to tell children who were learning chess because they get very antsy and they get a little nervous. So literally just like sit on like the thighs of like underneath their legs. And it just makes you think before you move your hands and then move a piece. Because over the board, the touch move rule applies. If you touch a piece, you don't say adjust, you're going to have to move it by force. So unfortunately here they blunder kind of early. We'll see when we play either this person another day or against someone else a different rating. This will probably happen more often than you expect. I expect people to hang pieces at 1,600, 1,800. I might even hang pieces. It happens, right? We're all human. But you have to look at things in the greater context. All right, that was my first video. I hope this was helpful for everyone. I really liked making this video. I want more instructional content. YouTube needs much more of that for chess. Chess is a very complicated game. Growing a lot of popularity. Thanks for stopping by, everyone. I'll see you in the next chess video.